Man, I hope y'all had. Ooh, that's a killer echo. Ah, boy. Yes, indeed. First day back after a little vacay, man. It's always rough. All right, let's try that again. I hope y'all had a beautiful Thanksgiving weekend. Mine was uneven as hell. I still had a great time, but it was uneven. We could get into that another time, but a lot of things have transpired since the last time we spoke. Um, damn, Frank Reich. Guess the price wasn't right in Carolina, huh? We'll talk about that and all of the happenings of the NFL. A lot of things kind of going on. You know, Thanksgiving is always a marker for me. It's like, okay, now the real fun begins. You've had 12 weeks to identify yourself as a pretender or a contender. Now we know who you are. At this point, there's some teams jockeying for the back end of the postseason, but we know who can win a Super Bowl and who can't by now. So let's get into it, man. I got a lot to say. You ready? I know you are. Let's do it, man. The Louie T Network podcast starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be? Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 375th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Just as a sidebar for some of you that this matters to, and not everybody this applies to, but if you are subscribed over to MusicHead University, I know it's been a bit of a long time since the last upload. I apologize for that, but you will get a brand new episode. We about to turn it up on that channel. I got my affairs in order now, and I'll be more consistent with the uploads. We're going to start going live on that channel here shortly. And remember, I promised you last year, this time, that I was going to give you guys my Christmas playlist. So we're going to do that over on MusicHead in the month of December early on. So you'll have a chance to kind of see what I'm over here banging over here on my Christmas playlist. So we're going to get hot and heavy over on MusicHead. So if you haven't already had a chance to do so, sub that channel up if you're interested in that content. If you're not going to consume it, then don't worry about subbing up. But if you are, go ahead, sub it up. We're about to get busy over there. And if you've already subbed up and you've been waiting for more content, one, I apologize. Two, we about to get it in. So with that said, let's jump straight into the shits today, man. I got a lot to say with this gem dropping session. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up, get you thinking a little bit. So I guess the price wasn't right in Carolina, right? Guess the price wasn't right in Carolina. Let me get that right. Frank Reich was fired after 11 games. He did not even finish his first season as Carolina Panthers head coach. Now, let me say this. I told you guys, I want to say it was week 6. My guess is week 5 or 6. I think it was 6. It might have been week 7, but I'm going to say 6. 6 sounds, because I think the Panthers started the season off 0-6, and then they beat the Texans in week 7. I believe that's what happened, but whatever the case may be. Remember when he did the hostage video? And I said, well, damn, ain't it a little early for a hostage video? I mean, we're not even halfway into your first season as the head coach, and you already doing a hostage video? It ain't a little early for that, but Frank was feeling the pressure already. And that told me everything I needed to know. I said, I'm going to tell y'all right now, that shit ain't going to last real long in Carolina because, one, I think they had philosophical differences. I think Frank wanted C.J. Stroud, and I think the owner wanted the quarterback that they ultimately drafted, which, look, I'm not sitting here second-guessing what was done. I was a big Bryce Young fan. Coming out of Alabama, I'm still a Bryce Young fan. I still think the kid is super talented. And I still think that if they do right by him, they can still salvage him as the number 1 overall pick in the 2023 NFL draft. That said, a lot needs to be done differently. I didn't know, though, that the coach needed to be fired 11 games in. Now, with that said, post-hostage video, I was like, man, this can't be good. And if you listen to what he was saying, like a lot of times when we get a hostage video from a coach, we're so fixated on the fact that they're even filming a hostage video that we don't listen for the content of what's being said. And he talked about some of the meetings and how they weren't fun, but they were all on the same page. And I'm like, you lying to us, Frank. Y'all ain't on. This is why you're doing the hostage video. You're not on the same page. He forcing you to say this shit. David Tepper, and we talked about this with him when he hired and then fired Matt Rule. David Tepper is the type of owner you don't want your organization to have. I feel really bad for Carolina Panthers fans because they're going down a dark, winding road that feels never ending, and usually nothing but death and destruction is in its path. When it's a dark, winding road with no lights and it's one lane, it's one way in each direction, shit could get, it could get real shitty quick. Somebody comes back there driving, distracted, inebriated, whatever, sleepy, you're asking for trouble back there. And as a fan of an organization that just got out of the most toxic relationship with an owner that one can have, I know the signs. I know them well. And I'm telling you right now, you're going down a path that is going to lead you to despair as a fan base, because your owner is effectively a fan. You can't have an owner that's impulsive, that overreacts to things that he's seeing. Leave that to us. Fan is short for fanatic, right? We're fanatical. When shit doesn't go, in my former life, when I was a merchandiser, we would set things up at the front register. You know what we call those? Impulse buys. Because you're trying to get somebody that's standing in line at the register, waiting to pay for their stuff, to look over and say, oh shit, I need batteries. Damn, I could use some fly swatter. Right? Damn, I could use some off right now. It's getting hot. Mosquitoes have been out. I could use some off. You want them to just pick up some shit that they didn't come in the store to buy, but because they don't have self-control, they're impulsive, they reach over, they grab it. That's why they put candy and gum and all types of shit right by the register that you're checking out at, because they're hoping that you don't have the discipline necessary to look at that Snickers bar, to look at that Kit Kat, to look at that pack of Winter Fresh gum and say, you know what? I don't need that. Why do you think they put the energy drinks and the sodas? And because a lot of people don't have the discipline to say, I'm good, I don't need that. Your owner is supposed to be able to avoid the impulse, the knee-jerk reaction to failure. Good owners don't overreact to things not going well quickly. Patience is a virtue, because as we know in this league, shit happens. And you can try to predict what's going to happen, but it's all but impossible in the NFL. One or two things don't go your way, and all of a sudden, the season you had planned all off season, what you've been talking about all July and August, leading into September, has all gone to shit 2 weeks in because of 2 injuries. That's the nature of the beast. What you can't do is lose sight of the overall direction of your program. I felt like this in the moment when David Tepper went out on this full court press for Matt Rule and made him the highest paid coach in the NFL. I said, that's a little off. But you know what? You know what I did? I did the same thing that dumbass fans like myself did when Daniel Snyder first bought this team. You know what we said? Oh, he just wants to win. That's what it is. He just wants to win. So he's willing to spare no expense. He doesn't care what it costs, what it looks like. He just wants to win. That changed very quickly after we saw him be impulsive and fire Marty Schottenheimer because he wasn't, quote, having fun, right? Marty said, hey, I got the controls. I got this. Why? Sit back and let me work. This is what I do. Everywhere I go, I win. Cleveland, Kansas City. Let me do me. I got this. Marty turned a struggling organization and a team that was a dumpster fire from 0-6 to 8-8 and barely missing the postseason. He had this thing going in the right direction. And because they weren't having fun, he fired him. Impulse, right? I can find another guy. Now, he gave Matt Rule a little bit of time. I'm not saying he fired Matt Rule like he did Frank Reich. But after he fired Matt Rule, and this is the important part, this is when I was like, uh-oh, this guy here. Uh-oh. To a man, you ask any of the Panthers players at the end of that season who they wanted to be their coach. And I get it. They're players. Players themselves can be impulsive. But you got to admit, at the end of the season, the Panthers stood for something. They were going to be physical. They were going to play tough, hard-nosed defense, and they were going to run the damn football. And if you weren't ready to deal with that level of physicality, ask the Lions who got 300 rush yards put on their ass at the end of last season. If you're not ready to deal with this level of physicality that we about to smack you in the face with, need not apply for this particular game because you're in trouble. They established an identity. They established what it meant to be a Carolina Panther under Steve Wilkes at the end of that season. And to a man, you ask any of those players, they told you who they wanted their next head coach to be. Remove the interim label, make this guy our head coach. And I felt like with what they had already built, you could have did everything that you did this offseason and feel really good about moving forward. Re-sign Deontay Foreman. Bring him back. He was a huge part of what you did at the end of last season. Why let him walk? Bring him back. Keep Steve Wilkes. You can go out, find you a new offensive coordinator. Keep the one you had last year. I don't give a shit. Steve Wilkes would have had this defense buzzing. And then you go out and you get Bryce Young. You could have made that same trade. Yeah, it would have sucked to lose DJ, right? Don't want to lose DJ Moore, but if you got to do what you got to do to get your quarterback, right? And you put Bryce Young in there with that physical mentality that you had last year, where you're not asking Bryce Young to be in the gun and throwing it 35 to 40 times a week. Shit, I don't even know if they're throwing it that much because you're not even on the field, it feels like, enough to throw it that many times. But I know he lives in a gun. I know they live in a gun. I know he doesn't get under center. I know they don't have an identity. I do know those things. I know they don't have a consistent run game. So a lot of the burden and the weight falls on Bryce Young's shoulders. And not to say that Bryce Young has been excellent this year, but it's hard to have any success behind that offensive line. They got cast-offs. John Toth. Listen to these names. John Toth is starting. This is a career. He was a hand and foot model. We had him in Washington. And the thing that they talked about wasn't his ability to play, but that this man was a hand model. This is who's starting on the offensive line for them. I forgot the name of the other bum I saw on the ground getting tossed around by Jeffrey Simmons on Sunday. Jeffrey Simmons had an all-pro game on Sunday against this Panthers trash that they put in front of Bryce Young. But everybody want to blame Bryce Young. And I'm not telling you Bryce has been perfect. Hard to be anything but trash behind that trash when you're throwing the ball to guys who aren't any good. And an offensive line that can't protect anybody. Aquanu he's a turnstile right now. He's getting turned around left and right. That offensive line is a sieve. Bozeman, and it's all kinds of bums on that line. But forget about that for a minute. We're still talking about their owner, David Tepper. They should have kept, and I was adamant, they should have kept Steve Wilks last year. They would have been so much better off. But no, that wasn't shiny enough of a toy for you. Nah, I got to go out here. Same thing the Raiders did, and they effed up. And you see they're trying to clean up their mess now. You had what you needed right in front of you. He wanted the new shiny toy, so he goes out and gets Frank Reich. Okay. Thomas Brown, all of that good stuff. All right, cool beans. When you're an owner and you think you're a GM and you think you know what's best for your organization and you got your fingerprints all over everything that's going on, it's only one thing that it can lead to, and that's disaster. It's why the coach-centric approach generally doesn't work in the NFL, because there's conflicting interests at work. See, when you're a general manager, your goal is always the big picture. You're always thinking about how can we get better? What do these contracts look like 2-3 years into the future? Hey, we got a quarterback we got to sign a big deal to in 2 years from now. These are things that the GM's thinking about. Overall cap health, roster building. These players at this particular position are getting old. We got to make some moves here. Always thinking big picture. As a coach, you shouldn't be thinking past tomorrow. How's practice going to look tomorrow? And then the day after that, and then the day after that. How are we going to look on Sunday? Did we get it done? No? Okay. How do we get it done next Sunday? You can't have but a micro approach as a coach. And as a GM, you look at it from a micro approach because you're assessing that coach, these players, but you're also taking a macro view look at it as well. Big picture. So you have to separate the two because sometimes big picture and right now don't mesh. Prime example for Washington, if you're Ronald Rivera, Jack Del Rio and company, you knew it was over when they traded Montez Sweat and Chase Young. You were dead. You were already dead prior to that, but you really didn't have a shot then, right? Because big picture, Josh Harris and his group knew that for the health of this organization, in its best interest, trading those two assets at that moment when their value was going to be its greatest was what was best for the team. For the head coach, that's the worst thing that could happen. Jack Del Rio told us last week at the podium, I didn't trade those guys. I didn't do that. They did that. You know what I mean? Okay. I didn't have anything because he knew that was going to make his job tougher. So you have to separate the two, because if I'm a coach and I run the organization as the de facto GM, I've got conflicting things that I'm running here. And I can't be objective as a GM when I'm also trying to win as the head coach. So you got to separate it. See, when you're an owner, you got to have checks and balances. Yeah, they got to answer to you, but you got to let people do their job. You can't be helicoptering over everything and wanting to touch everything and think you know every damn thing, because you don't know shit. And David Tepper is treating this like a hedge fund manager or some shit. This ain't the business world. You running an NFL organization. So when shit doesn't work, you can't just stop, turn, and pivot immediately and go to something else. You'll never build any continuity that way. And there's something to be said about admitting I made a mistake and moving on from that. But how many times are you going to do it? He's been their owner for what? 4 years? They've had 4 different head coaches, 2 interim, 2 permanent. They're going to have a 5th next year. Like, what are we doing here? And it's all because this guy is essentially a fan running an NFL organization. He's got no patience. He's got no perseverance. He only knows one thing. I want to win, and I want to win now, like a fan. And he thinks he knows personnel. He's selecting the quarterback. That Bryce Young pick, it's got David Tepper's fingerprints all over it. Just like when Washington selected Dwayne Haskins, it had Dale Snyder's fingerprints all over it. Let the people that you employed to do a job do their job. You can't be owner, GM, and be helicoptering over the head coach. And that's what David Tepper is doing. And I'm telling you, as a Panthers fan or as a Washington fan, I'm telling you, Panthers fans, I feel for you. Like Shaka Khan, I feel for you. Your owners do. Your owner is some trash. And he's not going anywhere anytime soon. And you're going to have to deal with this. He's as impulsive as it gets. He thinks he knows everything. And he's going to want to have his hand in every decision that's made regarding the Carolina Panthers. And there's no line he won't cross. And that's how it was with Daniel Snyder for the better part of 25 years. There wasn't a line that wasn't blurred for him. Whenever he felt like it, he was the GM. When he felt like he needed to be, he'd be the team president. If he felt like he needed to be the head coach, he was that too. Can't have it if you want to be a successful organization. So Frank Reich's out of a job. I don't even know who's been promoted to interim head coach. It doesn't matter at this point. Panthers aren't going to be any better than they were yesterday before they decided to fire Frank Reich. And so at this point, they're going to finish out this season. They're going to find themselves another head coach who, and for all intents and purposes, will probably be a puppet. More likely than not. Another yes man that he wants to be able to control. But they got so many holes on that roster. That's the problem, is you got to get you a really good GM. Scott Fitterer isn't getting the job done. That's where the problem begins. If we're being honest, what does that roster even look like? That offensive line is a joke right now. It is a mess. The receiver position, Mingo, I never thought he was worthy of a second-round pick, but it is what it is. He's here. You can't complain about it. You still need a lot of shit at receiver, period. Like Laviska Shenault, I think that was more of a Matt Rule type. Like, he doesn't fit. He doesn't do anything, right? It's just a lot of stuff that you're collecting. I actually like Chuba Hubbard. I think Miles Sanders, he was kind of, I think he was a little bit shell-shocked by how things have gone for him, you know, and he did it to himself, fumbling the football and things of that nature. But he was under the doghouse at one point. But he's a good football player, you know. There's some stuff there worth salvaging, but most of it is on the defensive side. Like guys like Troy Hill who are playing their asses off, like there's some stuff there. And I know you got a ton of injuries too. Defensively, you got some stuff. I like Frankie Louvu a lot. We already know, you know, what zero is all about. We know what Brown is about, 95. Like there's some pieces over there that you can work with. Like I just said, Troy Hill's playing his ass off. Jeremy Chin, when healthy, we know what that kid's about. J.C. Horn, I think there's some talent there, right? There's some pieces to play around with defensively. Offensively, there's a lot of work to be done. And whether you believe in the quarterback or not, at this point, you already spent the number 1 overall pick on Bryce Young. The dude can play football. So figure out a way to get him to play better. It starts by getting him protection up front. Maybe you need to tinker with the scheme. But at the end of the day, he doesn't even stand a chance back there. We all know when you have a shorter quarterback, your interior from guard to guard better be intact. Because he can't see over the line all that great to begin with. So you better not let the interior of that offensive line collapse in front of him. He doesn't stand a chance inside with guys like John Toth and Bozeman and these bums that you have in front of him. Are you kidding me? You're right. Aquanu getting spun around like a turnstile, he doesn't stand a chance back there. Moton is your best offensive lineman right now. You got to fix that before you fix anything else. And you gave up so much to get him that you're not in a position to necessarily fix it in the manner that you want to fix it. But this is the cards you've been dealt because of your owner. Now you got to deal with it and you got to figure the shit out. Tough position to be in. Glad it ain't me. Hey, all I can say to Panthers fans out there is, hey, chin up. Chin up. It'll get better one day. Don't ask me when that one day is. Because as long as David Tepper's in there effing shit up, he's going to have a come to Jesus. And I don't know if there's anybody in his circle or anybody that he'll listen to that can get through to him to tell him, bro, you got to take a step back. Sometimes you want something so bad and you squeeze so tight that it becomes counterproductive, harmful even. I know he wants to win, but there's a way to go about it. And firing Frank Reich after 11 games, I assure you, ain't it? Not to say that Frank Reich was doing a hell of a job and that the future was bright with him as the head coach. Not saying that at all. As a matter of fact, this might have been the right move. But you hired him. So once again, what does that say about you and Scott Fitterer and what you're building in Carolina right now? Frank was only utilizing the pieces that you gave him. And they weren't very good. We'll see what happens with the Panthers moving forward. I got my eye on them. They're going to be a nice little scientific experiment on what not to do. As a Washington fan, I've already seen it firsthand. I'm going to use the Panthers as another experiment to see if you can actually change as an owner. We'll see. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to Slate Skatin. We're going to make this quick. Nice, quick, and fast today because we at the point of the season now where if you ask, right? So I'm not spending a whole lot of time, frankly, on teams who aren't any good. You know, the Panthers and the Titans played. They both stink. So I don't need to spend a lot of time on that game, right? So I guess I could go through the Thanksgiving games too. We really didn't do that on Thursday. So I can quickly go through those. So we'll start there. Let's start with Thursday. And what a surprise, man. Packers and the Lions, 29-22 victory for the Green Bay Packers. And this is less about the Packers, even though they played well. And I thought Jordan Love did some good things. You know, I'm a Jordan Love fan. You know, a lot of people were ready to punt on Jordan Love. And I'm like, hey, this kid can play. He's super talented. That's a young Packers team. Give him some time. Okay? Give him some time. And you're starting to see that come to fruition. But this is less about the Packers, more about the Lions. And this is a Lions team that people want to buy into. I told you I've been somewhat apprehensive to buy into what the Lions are selling. Why? Because the Lions, for me, still feature Jared Goff at quarterback, and there's only so much you can do with Jared Goff as your starting quarterback. And they've done a phenomenal job of running the football. Love what Ben Johnson's done there and kind of taking some of that pressure off. The play action has been phenomenal. Goff has been really good in that space, but it's still Jared Goff. And, you know, you see it in games like Thanksgiving where he can't move. He can't run. He's a sitting duck back there. And in today's NFL, you better be Tom Brady or you better be able to run. And Jared Goff, last time I checked, not Tom Brady. And so if you can't run and you're just standing back, you're a sitting duck. And the Packers were just teeing off on Jared Goff. And when Goff gets tunnel vision and he starts to feel the pressure, he's not the same guy. When he's in a rhythm and he's tossing it all around the field and they're dialing up plays and they got the defense off balance, he is a nightmare to deal with because he's super accurate with the football. He can be very decisive. But when he's not locked in, when he feels pressure and you get to him early, you can really fluster him, and he's a different dude. And this Lions team, they're on a tailspin right now. I get it. They snuck by the Bears. They barely got by Chicago. But if we go back a week prior to that, they gave up 38 points. And, Dan Campbell gave this passionate speech in the locker room about not apologizing for how you win. And I agree with him. I don't give a shit how it looks. Just get it done. But they gave up 38 points to the Chargers. Now, they scored 41, so it was all good. But you look at that. You look at what they did the following week against the Bears, where they were turning the ball over. Goff was getting pressured, and they were down big, and they should have lost that game. And the defense was giving it up early. They got it. They found a way to survive, came back and won. Then they were getting their asses handed to them. They were lucky. We were sitting there Thanksgiving Day. My uncle, my dad, my sisters, my wife, we're all sitting there. We're watching the game. And we all, to a man, in that room said, they're lucky this score isn't 37-6 right now. They're getting destroyed. And if not for Green Bay making mistakes and missing opportunities, that game would have been over in the first half. So this Detroit Lions team, it's hard for me to put into words what they are right now. Are they a contender in the NFC? I don't think so. I don't think they can beat Philadelphia. I don't even know if they'll play Dallas. We'll get to see that up close and personal. I think Dallas can get pressure on him and fluster him and get him to make mistakes. If Green Bay can do it, I think the Cowboys can do it. They're definitely not on the 49ers level, if you ask me. And we've seen them when they claim to be a bully, but we've already seen what happens when they see a real bully, okay? They're tough until they meet a real tough guy. They're Malibu's most wanted are these Detroit Lions, okay? They're tough guys until they meet real tough guys. Good job by the Packers. They've gotten hot here of late. They're starting to try to turn things around. We'll see if it continues. They're 5-6. Lions are 8-3. Still atop the NFC North division. Still one of the best teams in the NFC, but it's looking a little iffy for me right now. I'll say that. Commanders, Cowboys, we've talked about that game already. 45-10, ass thrashing by the Cowboys by the Cowboys over the Commanders. Jack Del Rio fired after the game. He was a scapegoat for me. Cowboys, this was a 20-10 game, 4 minutes into the fourth quarter. And then the shit just fell apart. Felt like the Buffalo game. I've already said that. Cowboys continue to dominate at home, continue to dominate lesser opponents. But they're going to go on a stretch now where they're going to play better teams, starting with Seattle on Thursday Night Football. And we're going to find out, what they're really made of when they play teams of equal or slightly less talent and winning pedigree. So we'll find out more about Dallas. They've been juggernauts at home this season, and it continued on Thanksgiving Day, destroying the Commanders 45-10, improving to 8-3 on the season. And so they're right there. They're trying to stay within arm's length of the Eagles, waiting for the Eagles to slip up. It's just not happening. But they can only control what they can control. They play the Eagles in Week 14. They got to continue to win. Maybe somebody will get the Eagles for them once. That's what they're going to need. But they got to continue to take care of business in the meantime. And they're doing that right now. Seahawks, 49ers was the nightcap. 49ers dominated the Seattle Seahawks. This was 24-3 at halftime. They kind of cruised. It allowed the Seahawks to kind of get back into the game. It never really felt like they were threatening. But it did, with the 10 unanswered in the third quarter to cut it to 24-13, it did feel a little bit like, hey, here they go. If they can get one more stop, they can get back into this game. But it never came to fruition. This 49ers team, since they've gotten Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel back in the lineup, they look like the team that started the season off 5-0. All right. They're the second best team in the NFC. And I would argue, and we'll see, they play Philadelphia this week. I would argue they're the best team in the NFC. And they may prove it this week. We'll see. I like this 49ers team a lot. And I think they're the best team in the NFC, but they're going to have to prove it. Right now, the Eagles hold that 10-1 record, but you can score on the Eagles. I think this 49ers defense is the best in the NFC, and I think they're going to prove it on Sunday against Philadelphia. So we'll see what happens. But I think you're seeing a preview of the NFC Championship game. Niners and Eagles. You're going to see that this week. 8-3 for the 49ers. Again, Dallas, Detroit, San Francisco, all 8-3, chasing the now 10-1 Philadelphia Eagles. We'll get to them a little bit later on. Seattle, 6-5. They did the same thing last year. Started off hot, got cooled off middle point of the season, then figured out just enough to get them into the postseason. I don't think it's going to be as hard this year. Last year, the NFC was way more competitive of a conference as a whole. The back end of the NFC stinks. We knew that coming in, which is why a fan like myself of a team like the Commanders felt like, hey, with the back end of the NFC being as stinky and funky as it is, you should be able to claim one of the 7 spots. The NFC South, the NFC North is as bad as we thought it was going to be. And unfortunately, and the West too, and unfortunately, teams like Washington wasn't able to take advantage of those divisions being stinky and the back end of the conference being funky. So Seattle's going to be in the playoffs, whether they're good enough or not. They're 6-5. I think they'll ultimately win 8 or 9 games, and that should be enough to get you in on the back end of the NFC. So we'll see what happens. What they've proven to me, Seattle, that is they're capable of beating teams that they're better than, but teams that are on their level, they're just not there yet. They're not there. Dolphins, Jets, Black Friday game. This was exactly what we thought it was going to be. It's crazy, though. This is a 10-6 game. People forget. This is a 10-6 game before the Hail Mary. I've never seen anything like this before. You throw a Hail Mary, it gets caught, and it gets returned for a 99-yard touchdown. That's when you know shit's going well for you, and that's when you know you got some bad karma. You got some bad juju on your side, because that ain't supposed to happen. Somebody's supposed to get to this guy. Somebody's supposed to get him out of bounds. There's supposed to be a block in the back. Something is supposed to go wrong on a 99-yard return for a touchdown on a Hail Mary. But instead, Javon Holland treated this thing like a missed 59-yard field goal that fell short, and then you got a bunch of big nasties on the field. But that's the thing. You still had receivers and running backs and all that. On a kick, it's a bunch of big linemen. So if you get all of them going in one direction and then you change directions, you got them, right? Not a lot of athletes on the field. You got receivers and running backs and all that good stuff. And he just waited for his blockers. And wow, that's a hell of a play. And from that point on, the Jets were defeated. Tim Boyle was awful in this game, but he's going to get the start next week again. And the Dolphins, ran away and hid with this thing 34-13, as they were supposed to. And they've, much like I said with the Lions and Dallas, they've feasted on, the little sisters of the poor, which is what good teams do. Like, don't demean a team for beating bad teams. You know how you get to 14-3? By beating bad teams. You got to beat some good ones too, but you got to beat the ones you're supposed to beat, right? You know how you get to 12-5? By beating the teams you're supposed to beat. You know how you end up 10-7, 9-8? By losing to teams that you're not supposed to lose to. So you can't get mad at Dallas and Philadelphia and Miami and some of these teams who are beating up on, because that's what good teams do. Now, the Eagles have proven that they can beat good teams. Dolphins and the Cowboys and, the Lions, not so much. Not so much. So they get it done again, 34-13 over the Jets. And I just find it comical that they're still entertaining Aaron Rodgers coming back for what? At 40 years old, off of an Achilles injury early in the season, why do you want to be the first to come back in the same season? Like, is your ego needing that much of a boost? Because these Jets, no matter what you do in the final 3 weeks of the season, These Jets aren't going to the playoffs. So what are you coming back for? It's over, if you ask me. But that's not my business. I digress. We move on to Sunday action. Steelers and Bengals. 16-10. This is what the Steelers do, man. Now, I will say, this past week did feature a new coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Matt Canada was gone, and they featured, who was their new coordinator? Let's see. Eddie Faulkner, who's the running backs coach, was running the offense. And Mike Sullivan, who's the quarterback's coach, was calling the plays. So it's like a joint effort now to piece this thing together, because the Steelers have never fired a play caller, an offensive coordinator in season before. That's just not how they operate, which is why the Steelers are one of the best organizations in the NFL. They're the direct opposite of what the Panthers have become. Anyway, I didn't realize how bad it had been under Canada. And look, Steelers fans have been screaming this for at least 3 years now. I didn't realize, though, his entire tenure, they never had 400 yards of total offense, not once. That almost seems impossible, because there's got to be a week where your quarterback – and remember, let's not act like Big Ben's been gone for, 5 years. Big Ben retired 2 years ago. Now, he wasn't himself at the tail end, but Jesus, you haven't had one game with 400 yards of total offense under Matt Canada? What in the hell? And they showed the Steelers' record in that time frame, and it just goes to show you how good of a coach Mike Tomlin is. And people love to shit on Tomlin, his in-game, adjustments, and his game management, this, that. People love to complain about Tomlin. I take him. You don't want him, let me have him. Because I've seen this man do so much more with less than any other team in the league, any other coaching staff. I've seen him do more with less. We've gone through the quarterbacks over time. They're doing it again. Pickett has been okay. It's funny because Pickett's a first-round pick, so nobody questions him when he's having subpar and marginal games. Just blame it on the coordinator, right? But had he been a fifth-round pick, had he been, a third-round pick, people would be like, hey, the Steelers got to go get him a quarterback. But they're not even putting shit on Kenny Pickett, right? And look, I'm not here to make this a referendum on Kenny Pickett. Matt Canada stunk, okay? And the fact that the first game after he leaves, they rack up over 400 yards of total offense. Now, still only led to 16 points, okay? It's the same old Steelers shit. But at least they were moving the ball. You watched that game at the very beginning. They were moving the ball, and they just weren't having success when it mattered the most, right? As you get down into that red zone, that's where you differentiate yourself. That's where you separate. You kick field goals, you lose games like this. They could have easily lost this game because they were kicking field goals. But that defense is too good. They're not going to allow a backup quarterback and Jake Browning to beat them, and that's what you do. You find a way to win, and that's what the Steelers have been doing all season long. That's what they've been doing during this entire run with Matt Canada as their offensive coordinator. And that's what they've done under Mike Tomlin, for that matter. Just find ways to win. He doesn't complain. He doesn't worry about what they don't have. Here's what we do have, and here's how we're going to get it done with what we do have. That's why you got to love Mike Tomlin. 16-10 is your final. Again, same points. More offense, and you'd like to think that if they can continue this in terms of the offensive yardage, it will yield more points moving forward. That's the hope. It didn't in this game, but the offense looked way more dynamic. They stretched the field a little bit more vertically. The run game seemed to open up a little bit more. Najee had 99 yards on just 15 carries. Jalen Warren had 49 on 13 carries. So the run game was really prolific in this particular ball game. Pat Freiermuth was getting open down the seams. Like that to me was the biggest thing, was they were able to work the middle of the football field with Pat Freiermuth, and that opened up the outsides. So Pickens started to get some targets down the field. Deontay Johnson, who dropped the touchdown, And that's part of the reason that this game was even close, because opportunities were there and guys didn't make plays. But at the end of the day, they get it done. Man, TJ Watt is an animal. He had 2 more sacks in this game and a forced fumble. He's ridiculous, man. Steelers win. They're 7-4. And I marvel at what they've been able to do. I just marvel at it. Texans, Jags, what a fun game this was. Right down to the wire. CJ Stroud was phenomenal. So was Trevor Lawrence, though. You know, so many people love to try to, talk shit about Trevor Lawrence like he ain't that dude. But he is. He played really well in this game, made some throws. And if guys like Calvin Ridley had a touchdown go right through his hands. Like, this game isn't even as close if guys just make the plays that are there to be made. That said, this thing came down to a walk-off field goal. Now, let me just say about CJ Stroud, man, this dude is electric. Boogie, oogie, oogie. Okay. He's starting to use his feet more. That was always the knock on him at Ohio State. He's starting to get more comfortable using his legs. He's still a little apprehensive to run. Literally, it's the absolute last-ditch effort for him running. And I'm like, bro, why is it like pulling teeth to get you to run and take the 12 yards the defense is giving you? Just take the 12 yards, bro. He wants to hold on to it, and he took a brutal sack at the end of this game because he likes to hold on to it. And look, you can't be upset when he's making these big-ass plays down the field to Tank Dell, or he's hitting Noah Brown because he rolled out and he extend, and he made this ridiculous throw. You can't be upset when he then takes the critical sack because he's trying to make a play. I've talked to you about this already. It's what the best in the game do. It's what Mahomes does. It's what Burrow does. It's what Allen does sometimes. CJ Stroud is looking like a guy that's going to do that. Brock Purdy does the same thing. You're going to take some sacks and some backbreaking ones that destroy drives, kill scoring opportunities, et cetera, because this guy's a playmaker. And in his mind, the play's not over. I can make something happen. But at the most inopportune time, he took a brutal sack that pushed them to the brink of field goal range, and it ultimately created that 59-yard field goal that they had to attempt with a backup kicker. Remember, Ka'imi Fairbairn is injured for the Texans. He got injured like 3 weeks ago. Remember, they had to kick a field goal with a backup running back a few weeks ago against Tampa. So they've been without their, real field goal kicker. So they got this this bum that they have kicking. That he was with the Rams and I think one other team or so. And I immediately said, okay, this guy's not very good as a kicker. Let me see. Let me find his name real quick. Matt Amendola. Yeah. So I had zero confidence he was going to make this kick after CJ Stroud took that massive sack at the end. And I had to credit Jacksonville's defense. They got pressure on CJ Stroud at the end of this ball game. They collectively as a group, and they didn't blitz. They didn't come after him. They rushed for, and they got after his ass in the most important portion of this game. When they had to have it, they got it done and forced that long-ass field goal attempt. And Matt Amendola, I didn't think he drove it enough. He kicked it like he was kicking a 47-yard field goal. You kicked it straight up in the air. You needed to drive that thing, bro. It's 59 yards. But I'd say that it almost got there. But he kicked it 58 yards. He needed it to be 59. It hit the crossbar. It bounced back, and they lose the game 24-21. I'll say this, though. I'm finally willing to admit the Texans are legit. Like, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, they're all right. I don't buy them. No, they're good. And they easily could have won this football game. Easily could have won this game. With the mistakes that Jacksonville made, Lawrence threw a pick, Ridley dropped a touchdown. With all the mistakes, their kicker, who's a really good kicker that they got from Denver, missed a field goal. For all the mistakes Jacksonville made, the Texans could have won this game, but they just fell short and lose the game 24-21. And that was for first place. Coming into the game, the Texans were 6-4, the Jags were 7-3. That was for first place. Texans, remember, a lot of you forgot this. They went to Jacksonville earlier this season and stomped a mud hole in Jacksonville. That was the game that they announced to the league, hey, we not trash for real. So they were going for the season sweep. And they fell short. And I think this is going to put a stranglehold on the division for Jacksonville. They're now 8-3. The Texans were the most competitive team. You know, I know Indianapolis is also 6-5. Nobody's worried about Indianapolis. Okay. This was the team that was going to get them. If they were going to get got, this was the team that was going to get them. And now they're 2 games clear of them. I think the Jags now, if they just take care of business down the stretch, are going to win the AFC South. It was in question, though. Texas had those boys on the ropes. Speaking of on the ropes, Bucks and Colts, Tampa Bay had their chances to win this game. They lose 27-20, drop to 4-7. That NFC South is wide open, and this was their opportunity, and they let it slip through their fingers. Meanwhile, Indy just keeps finding ways to win. I love what they're doing offensively. I've said this already. Shane Steichen is a genius offensively. I really like what he's doing, man. And he does some creative shit. And it looks like the Eagles' offense from last year, just with less talent. And he's still getting the production, which tells you how good of a play caller he is. But this was all about the Colts defense rising to the occasion, making some stops. The Bucks were moving the football. You know, they got down to the 1-yard line. They kept them out of the end zone, right? They forced an interception of Baker Mayfield. They banged Baker up on a quarterback sneak, didn't let him in, got him hurt. And then forced them to kick a field goal. Or did they go for it on 4th down and not get it? They got the sack at the end, forced fumble to preserve the victory. This defense stepped up and made plays in this game when they had to be made. There were opportunities in this game because the Bucs, who haven't been successful running the football all season long, were running the football. They had success in this game, and it gave them a shot, right? But too many missed opportunities in this game. We can just go straight to the red zone, and I bet you that'll tell the story. The Colts were 3 of 5. The Bucs were 1 of 3. That's it right there. You can go 3 of 5, but you can't go 1 of 3. You know, 3 of 5 is way different than 1 of 3. Both of them missed twice in the red zone, but the other team got there 5 times and scored 3 touchdowns. You got there 3 times and you scored 1 touchdown, and that's the difference in the game. And so you can pretty much look at it from that perspective. You know, the Bucs just had opportunities and they missed. Point blank, period. And the Colts didn't, and they got it done. And they're 6-5. I mean, it's crazy. You look up and you say Indianapolis 6-5. What? But if the playoffs started today, the Colts are in. Yes, the Colts with Gardner Minshew at quarterback are in. It's crazy, I know. They won't make the playoffs. Somebody's going to take that spot from them. Somebody needs to take that spot from them. But tell you what, they can score. They can score some points, man. Falcons, Saints, NFC South family business. You know how the family do it. This was a big one, too, because this was first place. Saints win this game. They create a little bit of distance between them and everybody in the division, because then that would have taken them to 6-5 on the season. And Atlanta would have dropped to 4-7. And Tampa's already at 4-7, and we know Carolina's not challenging for anything. So they could have created some distance between them and everybody else in the division. But I told you, the Saints are just off. I don't trust them. I don't think they're good. And now they got a ton of injuries at the receiver position. They came into the game with Michael Thomas banged up. Shaheed gets injured first quarter, right? So he's banged up. He tries to go. He can't. And then later on in the game, Olave gets a concussion. And I'm like, well, who the hell are you throwing the football to at this point? So now it's the kid from Wake Forest, Perry, and it's A.T. Perry or whatever his name. It's a lot of stinky stuff out there. So, and you look, that's been the issue with the Saints, is that something's just off. Offensively, like Derek Carr with another one of these non-nutritional value 300-yard passing games. He's had more of those this season with empty calories than anybody I can remember. Another 304 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. And when you watch him, he looks like he stinks. He looked like he stinks, you know. And I can't stand Derek Carr because he's one of those guys that has to let you know, and I've brought this up before, he's one of those dudes that has to let you know it wasn't my fault, it was the receiver's fault. So there's a miscommunication between the rookie, Perry, on a 3rd down where Carr expects him to run a fade ball to the corner of the end zone, and he stops. It runs like a comeback, so they're not on the same page. And Carr's like standing there with his arms shrugged, like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Right? Like, bro, did anybody say that when you threw that stupid ass pick six to Jesse Bates III? Did anybody look at you with their arms like this, like what you doing? When you threw that dumbass pick six? No, nobody looked at you like that. Stop doing that shit, man. But that's Derek Carr for you. He's a bitch ass dude, man. Anyway, I digress. The Saints, they're not any good, man. And I think the Falcons are the best team in that division. It sounds crazy. They're both 5-6. Falcons take the lead now after beating the Saints. And I think the Falcons are the best team. And they got issues at quarterback. Like, they won this game 24-15. This was more about the defense making plays than anything else because Desmond Ridder threw 2 more picks. And the reason he got benched is because he couldn't stop turning the football over. And he did it again in this game. And I don't know if they're going to be – like, they ran the shit out of the football. Like, they got to a point where it was like, okay, no more of this Desmond Ridder shit. We're going to turn around and hand this bitch off to Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. And, you know, and then we'll go play action fake off of that. Hopefully have a huge opening so he can't make a mistake. I mean, they got to babysit Ridder at this point. And it's hard to win in this league when you're babysitting your quarterback because you're scared he's going to make a mistake. I don't know how injured Taylor Heineke is, but something. If they don't win this division, it's going to be because of the quarterback position, which sucks because they're probably the best team in that division. In the Gutter Bowl, the worst game of the day, arguably, this rivals the Jets and Giants as the worst game of the season. Giants survived 10-7. Look, there's nothing to see here. All right. The Patriots bench Mac Jones again. He threw 2 more picks in this game before getting canned in favor of Bailey Zappi, who came in and he threw a pick of his own as well. The Patriots stink on offense. The Patriots stink as an outfit overall. Changes will be made in the offseason. They're in a position to draft their quarterback of the future. That guy is not currently on the roster. They sit in the top 3, I believe, in the draft order process. You're either 2 or 3 right now. And they're going to get it. I can't see them winning very many more games, if any, with their quarterback situation being what it is. And then they missed the field goal at the end that would have tied the game at 10. Nobody wanted to see more of this. This needed to end in regulation. And the football god said, okay, I know. Enough's enough. I did it to you once already with the Giants and Jets. I swear I won't do it to you again. And that's why he took and physically blew that football wide left because he said, I can't allow this shit to go to overtime. The Giants fans have already seen enough of this shit. They did this with the Jets. They don't need to do this again. And as a football fan, I said, for the love of football, bro, spare me, please. He's like, hey, I got it, man. I get it. Okay, I got it. I appreciate you. Giants are 4-8, and they're going in the wrong direction. They're winning games when they should be losing games. Their GM came out today and said, hey, we're gonna look at a quarterback. Which is why you should be winning, but hey, to each its own. And meanwhile, the Patriots are 2-9, and they're off to their worst start under Bill Belichick. And coincidentally enough, it'll be his worst start in New England, and it'll be his last season in New England as well. Panthers, Titans, as we already talked about, they're 1-10 are the Carolina Panthers after their 17-10 defeat at the hands of the Titans, who are 4-7. Both of these teams aren't any good. The difference here is the Titans have their quarterback in Will Levis. Even if it's only, just like with Washington, even if it's only for one more year, you gotta see more of this. Will Levis, man, does he spin it? I mean, that shit comes out of his hand like maximum RPMs. I talked about easy gas. He might have the strongest arm in the NFL right now. Like, I'm not bullshitting. That shit comes out. It's a flick of the wrist, literally, and that shit comes out. He continues to do solid things at home for this Titans football team. The Titans are 4-0 this year at home. Problem is they're 0-7 on the road. So they're 4-7 on the season. If only they could play all their games at home, right? Meanwhile, the Panthers, this was a tough watch, man. That offensive line is gross. The play calling at times is like they had at the end of the game, and I think Bryce Young might have checked into this. a wide receiver screen. I think he expected pressure. But they throw a wide receiver screen on like 4th and 7 with the game on the line, and they get like 2 yards. And you're like, what the hell was that about? Right? Like, yeah. And then they had a 4th and 1, a 3rd and 1, and a 4th and 1, and they went gun, and got stopped. And I'm just like, why? Why? But I said that on my Washington show. If you're a Washington fan, I talked about the Panthers. I talked about the gun runs and that's an epidemic league wide. I just don't want my team to be a part of that shit. But this was 17-3 at half, and the Titans just hung on for dear life. Because the Panthers can't score. They're just not a good offense team, and I feel bad because their defense isn't that bad. They just don't have any help. They don't have any help. 1-10 for the Panthers. Again, I don't see them winning any more games. They fire their head coach, Frank Reich, today. And the Titans are now 4-7. Rams, Cardinals. Wow, what an ass thrashing this was, 37-14. And the score really doesn't do it any justice. This game was a beating, a sound beating. The Rams did whatever the hell they wanted to do in this game. I'm still questioning, and I know he just got back, and I don't want to be hypercritical of Kyler Murray, but I'm watching him, and there's just plays that he just doesn't make and throws he doesn't make, and I just like, boy, you're really in a position to take a quarterback. And I know the contract with Murray is impossible to get out of, but that shouldn't stop you from drafting a quarterback if you don't think he's the guy. You can eat that money and still have another quarterback on a rookie contract. That's possible, right? Like, I struggle with Kyler Murray at times. I'm not gonna lie to you, but this wasn't about Kyler Murray in particular. This was about their defense. They got gutted on the ground. Kyron Williams came back from injury, and they made him look like Adrian Peterson in this game. He had 6 catches for 61 yards and 2 touchdowns to Kyron Williams. He had 16 carries for 143 yards on the ground. He had over 200 yards of all-purpose offense by himself, okay? Matthew Stafford was really clean in this game, 4 touchdown passes, 1 interception, but he was out. By the time they got to the midpoint of the 4th quarter, he was on the sideline chilling. Keying on the sidelines. This was 37-8 at one point. What a beating the Rams delivered. Neither one of these teams are any good. The Rams are 5-6 though. They're making it interesting in terms of a playoff spot, and they've got some winnable games. Washington down the stretch. I think they played this Cardinals team again, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if they used up both of their Arizona Cardinals. As a matter of fact, I can check real quick. I don't think they used up both of their Cardinals yet, though. Yeah, they did. That was their second Cardinals. So they got the Browns. That's a winnable game. They got the Ravens. Saints, winnable game. Commanders, Giants. Yeah, the Rams could be right in this mix. At 5-6, I don't think they're good, but they'll be in the mix. Cardinals are 2-10, and they're on a path for the number 2 overall pick. I don't see anybody getting ahead of Carolina, but I think they can be right there. They're right there with the Patriots. We'll see what happens with the Cardinals moving forward. We knew they were going to stay, and they're proving to be what we thought they were. Broncos and Browns, man. This was a physical game, man. Yikes. You want to talk about some hitting? They were hitting in this game. Denver makes it 5 in a row. What is this, 5 in a row? Yeah, they were 1-5. They've won 5 in a row. They're 6-5. They're still on the outside of the playoffs looking in, but God damn it, they're playing spirited ball. That defense is what we thought they were going to be again. And now they're not turning it over. They're creating 3 or 4 turnovers every week, it feels like. I think they've got to be on a streak now of at least 3 games or 4 games in a row with 3 or more turnovers. They created another 3 in this game. Russell Wilson is finding ways to, get him in the end zone. Had a crazy touchdown pass to Adam Troutman, who slid and kept his knee in bounds, originally ruled incomplete, then overturned by replay as being in bounds. They lit Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I told the young fella, watch out. Young fella, you're doing too much. Young fella, get out. Bow! That hit he took, and it should not have been a penalty. That was as clean a hit as it gets. It was the violent nature of the way he got rocked that forced him to throw the flag. That was not a penalty. He hit him in his shoulder. He never contacted him with his head. He did not lead with his helmet. It was a clean hit. He just got rocked. His mouth was bleeding. He had a concussion. All of that probably came from like the whiplash of everything. It was a brutal game in terms of they were hitting out there, man. Physical. This Broncos team is physical anyway. And PJ Walker came in. He stunk it up. I keep looking at the Browns saying, bet you wish you would have traded for Jacoby Brissett. Now, don't you? Anyway, they're 7-4 are the Browns after this loss. But they're going to have to do something. They're going to have to scour these streets, find one of these veteran quarterbacks that's out here that could maybe salvage something for them. Because PJ Walker ain't it. Mari Cooper left this game. They tore his ribs all to pieces. Knocked him out of this game. They was hitting out there, man. I ain't bullshitting you. Denver's now 6-5 after the 29-12 victory. And this was some physical dominant shit by Denver. Like, damn, this was some throwback shit. I'm not bullshitting you. They was out here hitting. And they're getting it done, man. So if you ask me to take one of those teams, even though the Broncos have a lesser record than the arrow's pointing up for Denver and the arrow's pointing down for Cleveland. And Myles Garrett left this game with an injury too. So for whatever it's worth. Chiefs Raiders. This thing started out 14-0 Raiders. Like me and my dad looked at each other and boss was like, hey, they in trouble. I was like, you're damn right, because Kansas City can't score. And they got their act together right before the half. 2 touchdowns in the second quarter, tied it up at 14. And then once they got even, you said, okay, they leave it now. Raiders, that was another one of those games. The Raiders game felt like the Bills game, a lot like the Bills. Like the Bills dominated the first half of that game against the Eagles, and they didn't have anything really to show for it like they should have. And the Raiders dominated the first half, and they were tied at halftime. And you're like, bro, you should be up. And you should be up big. But they didn't take advantage of all the opportunities that were presented to them. The Chiefs had like 39 yards of total offense in the first quarter. They had 1 first down in the game in the first quarter. Like they were getting destroyed. And Mahomes and company did Mahomes and company like things in the second half. I didn't realize it'd been since October. We're almost in December. It had been since October 22nd since the last time the Chiefs had scored any points in the second half. That's how long it had been. And they dominated the second half against the Raiders. We talked about this defense for the Chiefs. They've been the catalyst all season long. They essentially shut the faucet off after the rough start to the game, giving up the 63-yard touchdown run to Josh Jacobs to have the lead open up to 14-0. They essentially shut the faucet off in the second half. And the offense woke the hell up finally in the second half, scored some points, separated from the Raiders, and won this thing comfortably 31-17. Rashid Rice had some drops in this game, but he's going to – I've said this already all season long. He's going to have to establish himself as the alpha receiver. You know, I'm going to need him to catch the ball. He had some drops in this game, but he's going to have to assert himself as the alpha. That he looks like the guy that's going to have to take the reins there. And he had his first 100-yard game of his career, 8 catches, 107 yards, and a touchdown. And he's going to have to be that guy for them. Chiefs improved to 8-3 on the season. Raiders dropped to 5-7. We told you that honeymoon phase with their interim head coach Antonio Pierce was going to be over after that Jets win, and they've lost 2 straight. They've been highly competitive in both of those games, but almost doesn't count, as a wise woman once told me. And then there's Bills-Eagles. What a football game this was. I don't know if I have enough time to get into this the way I want to. I think I'm going to save this recap for my Monday Night Football overtime, and I'm going to carve out a niche for this particular game because it was so good. And there's so much that I want to say, but I'm running out of time, and I still got another segment to go. So we'll save it for that. Just know that the Bills, they needed this game, and they didn't get it. And they had every opportunity to get it, and they didn't. And, man, the Eagles know how to win. And I'll say this. I looked at my dad, and my dad said, man, there isn't a luckier team in the NFL than the Eagles. I said, they get all the breaks, don't they? But sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, but the Eagles are both. Let that sink in. The Eagles are both. They're not just lucky. they're really good too. Damn good. And they know how to win these types of games. And boy, this was a classic. We will we'll come back to that one. Sunday night game, Ravens, Chargers. I didn't do a breakdown of this like I normally do, so I'll quickly just go over this. Ravens win 20-10. Sort of an uneven game for the Ravens. The offense, they sort of moved the ball early, couldn't really get anything going late until the very end of the game. The Chargers defense kept them in this ball game. The turnovers were the story. They forced 4 turnovers in this game, did the Ravens defensively. They got after Justin Herbert. And, it's a shame because you have, you get the fumbles, you got the Herbert interception. He leads them down the field late in the game. It's 13-10 after a touchdown, and they get him the ball back. And every time Herbert seems to have the football in these situations, he gets sacked at the end to end the game. It happened against Miami. It happened in this game. I think it happened against Green Bay. And I'm like, what the F, bro? What are we doing? All right. Remember, Brandon Staley was, being berated for calling the defense. And they looked a lot better in this game. It seems like when they're on Sunday night against a team that's better than them. Remember last year they played the Dolphins? And that Dolphins offense was high octane. They were, running around doing all kinds of shit. And the Chargers kind of stymied them last year and won that game. They kind of did the same thing to the Ravens, except they didn't win the game. They turned it over and they made mistakes. And it was just too much for them to overcome in this game. And the Ravens made plays at the end when they had to have them. But the fumbles, you can't have 3 fumbles, right? And an interception thrown. And, when you need it the most, you give up a big run for a touchdown. And when you get the football with a chance to tie or take the lead, you don't protect your quarterback. Put all those things in conjunction with one another, and you're going to find a way to lose the game. And they did, 20-10. Ravens are now 9-3. They got a bye week coming. I'm not sure that they're not the best team in the AFC, but I'm still not 100% sold. But we will see. They're 9-3, and right now they lay claim to being the best team in the AFC. Chargers dropped to 4-7, and I think changes are coming at season's end with Brandon Staley and maybe even GM Tom Telesco. So they continue to not be able to win the close games. That's the issue with the Chargers. They just don't know how to win the close games. So let's go to our final segment and garbage time. I got a couple of supers that I need to knock out, so I'll knock those out. Video channel, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB who writes, Tepper freestyling on Dan Snyder type beats. He sure is. I feel so bad. As I said earlier, I feel for you. Your owners do. I feel for Panthers fans out there, man. It's going to be rough. It's going to have to get a lot worse before it gets better with an owner like this. And you're just hoping that this dude wakes up because he's so arrogant and he's so, controlling. Because he's every aspect of his life, he's been able to will it into a win for himself. This ain't that. But he's probably got to hit rock bottom before he figures that out. Or he'll just keep doing the same thing over and over. We'll see. This video channel, you're not wrong. Syndico. I kid. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you who writes, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. That's where you are. Your owner is literally crumbling this organization with his stranglehold that he has on it. He literally has his hand in everything, and nothing is going to be accomplished because he wants to do everything. And a better statement hasn't been applied than that one right there to your organization in the state that it's currently in. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. And that's where you're headed right now. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB who writes, what's good, Lou? Did you see the report about Washington being a very attractive option for GMs in league circles? I did. I was going to save that for when we go live on Wednesday night. think that's going to be a great topic of discussion then. Because remember, what did I tell you guys 4 months ago, like 3 months ago, 2 months ago even, when we saw this thing kind of going off the rails? I said, this is going to be the best destination this offseason. I said that. But we'll talk more about it. Trust me. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, video channel. I'm going to see if I can find that quote. I don't know if I will be able to or not. Anyway. So we got a Monday night game. And I'm going to give you my thoughts on that quickly. So you got Bears and Vikings. Vikings will be wearing their throwback unis tonight. That'll be dope. Josh Dobbs saga continues. Everybody, this love story, love affair, kind of cooled off last week with the loss to the Broncos, but they're still in the thick of things. And you know what's crazy? Had they won last week and then won this game, they would be a half game behind Detroit. They haven't had their bye week yet, but they would have been 8. They would have had a chance to go to 8-4. Instead, they're sitting there at 6-5. They win tonight. They get to 7-5, and they keep a little bit of pressure. Not as much as they could have, but they keep a little bit of pressure on Detroit. That said, the Bears, they're in the process of figuring out if Justin Fields is the man for the job or not. We'll see what happens. The Vikings, I think, are the better team. They're better coached, and they're on a mission. I think they're going to try to make the playoffs, and they got a realistic opportunity with the kind of football they're playing right now, even with Josh Dobbs at quarterback. Justin Jefferson not going to play in this game, but I think he'll be back next week. That'll help them tremendously. But in the meantime, I think they'll continue to be, as long as they steer clear of the turnovers. Alexander Mattison doesn't put it on the ground. Josh Dobbs doesn't try to play superhero and do too much and turn it over. They take care of the football. I think they'll win this game, and I think they'll win it comfortably. I got the Vikings winning this game tonight. I think 23-13 is what I see, something to that effect. I wouldn't be shocked if it ends up being like 23-20, right? But I think it's going to be 23-13, 23-16, something like that. Give me the Vikings. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 375th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I thank you guys for joining me. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys tonight for Monday Night Football overtime. If not, I'll see you guys tomorrow. If I don't see you again then, I'll see you on Wednesday. Remember, NFC East Super Friends in full effect tomorrow night, 8 p.m. on the NFC East Super Friends channel. If you haven't subscribed to that channel already, please do so. Turn on your notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And I'll be live Wednesday night for Commanders Nightly News, and also be live again with the Louie T Network podcast on Wednesday as well. I'll open up the floor. I haven't done this enough this year, but I'll open up the floor to you guys, and we'll have our social media maneuvers where you guys can pretty much talk about whatever it is you want. But until then, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. See you guys at the conclusion of Bears Vikings. God bless and good night.